Anyway, moving on, because I'm very conscious of time here, guys. Budgeting and forecasting, probably one of my most favorite sales pitches for implementing hardware asset management. And there's a number of ways that we can help your stakeholders, your budget holders, procurement, finance, even CIO, CTO levels with the budgeting and forecasting that we can help with. So first of all, obviously, we've got the BAU turnover costs. So how much are we spending, on average every month, just through BAU, wear and tear, lost, stolen, etc. How much have we had to spend on replacements? What we're expecting to forecast for next year as well. So how many new starters do we have each month on average? How many leavers do we have? How many assets do we reclaim? How many do we then need to buy to bridge that gap, etc.? You can build out a whole forecast for your next year's hardware budget by doing some analysis like that, looking at the HR starters and levers, understanding the equipment you're going to get back, maybe make a guesstimate on how many of those are not actually fit for being repurposed. And then you can use your AMDB and your inventory tools to understand how many assets you're going to need next year, what the likely cost is going to be, so you can submit a really good and quite accurate budget. And you can also show in here optimization opportunities for extending the life cycle for specific models if there's nothing wrong with it. Maybe if you spend $20 on a battery, that'll give it a new lease of life and you can use it for longer. You can add all of that into your budgeting and forecasting plans to really, show the financial value that HAM can bring the organization. You could also even put in some guesstimates on your optimization activities that year. So how many assets are you reclaiming that haven't been used? Even your ITADs, have you got a prediction on how much money you're going to get back through ITADs? All good things that you could put into your budgeting and forecasting and really get under the eyes of like your C-level executives. Also building that hardware refresh budget. A really easy, simple way of doing this that I do within all organizations, no matter the level of maturity, even if it's just a validation of what the AMDB is saying, is we look at the warranty information. We get exports from all of the inventory tools, the AMDB, etc. We look at the purchase date, when the warranty expired, when our internal life cycles expire, and when the vendor's end of life is. And then basically go through, create some pivot table, a graph, whatever it may be, to show the number of models, locations, users, etc. that are targeted for hardware refresh for the next year. That may be that we haven't managed to replace it in the previous years. There's a hangover. This one actually should have been refreshed 2 years ago or 1 year ago. And then the stuff that's due to be refreshed that year. And we build the budget around that based on the expected models and the pricing that we're currently paying for those models. This is really good as well for showing the remaining technical debt within your organization, as it should, constantly come down until you hit that next 3-year period. So it's a really good way of showing ITAM and HAM's value within an organization when you're doing these forecasting, and you can see like you've got huge amounts of legacy stuff here. We've still got stuff that's from 2017, 2018. You do it next year. We've only got stuff that went end of life 2020, 2021. You do it next year. We have got only stuff that was due end of life last year and this year. Awesome. We're spending less on that hardware refresh. But then you hit that year 3, year 4, year 5, whatever the internal life cycle is for those assets. And then you hit that big one again, because when ITAM has started to implement the hardware refresh and the ITAD processes, because suddenly you're going to have loads of new devices that we purchased 3 years ago to replace the legacy ones that now are going to need to be replaced. Actually pinpoint when you started implementing HAM and ITAM, which is, for an ITAM geek like me, is really interesting. An interesting one, right? So it's kind of like what you do with software. You go around to all of the key stakeholders, you go around to HR, people, even CTO levels, etc., and say, right, what projects are coming up this year that are going to require an investment in net new hardware assets, which is going to require an increase in existing asset types that we've got out there. Let us know. We want to be able to forecast and budget that in advance, look at what the recommended retail price is. Maybe, again, make some guesstimates based on the quantities you're ordering and what kind of discount levels you get for the hardware, etc. But yeah, adding that into the plan, again, just shows how you're being proactive, being one step ahead of the game by getting all of those project costs up early. Your PMO office may have this, your project management office. Again, this doesn't have to actually go through. It's just you being upfront saying, we're expecting this project to kick off in June. It's going to require 10 new laptops. It's going to require this new switch, this new router, whatever it may be. Just showing that you are being proactive and adding extra hardware asset management value. Repairs budgets as well, going through the ITSM tool, looking at the repairs that have been out of warranty. Forecasting, how many assets are actually out of warranty this year that if we had to repair, it would be on us to repair. We'd have to bear the costs, etc. Doing some forecasting for that, so you've got a budget for repairs, so there's no nasty surprises when users start reporting things going wrong. New models for testing. This is something that's really important within hardware asset management, is that if you're getting a brand new, net new model within your organization, you have to do a lot of testing on it before you're able to release it out in the wild. Does it meet the requirements of the user? We mentioned this before. Is it the right size? Pixels on the screen? Compatible with software? Compatible with this? Compatible with that? But also, drivers? Do you have to change your imaging process? Does the asset tag actually have to be moved because it doesn't quite fit where you originally thought? There's a lot of things you have to consider before implementing a new model, and that's why you need some test machines and budget for test machines. What we primarily do is order like 2 or 3 test machines so that they can be tested in different scenarios, different stakeholders, etc. Even if it's an existing model you have, but it's a newer version, like a newer generation, still follow that onboarding process, still do the testing, still make sure you've got some budget left over for that. Typically for laptops, you're looking at 1, maybe 2 new iterations a year. Monitors, well, depending on the monitor vendor that you're using, that's actually been quite more frequent than that due to supply chain issues and material issues. But yeah, just set aside some budget for some test machines for any of the new stuff that's coming in. If it going back to that project, but if it is part of a project, I would recommend that the project pay for those. As part of their project costs to test machines for your IT teams to test, I would suggest that those costs come from the project. And finally, obviously, while we're doing all the hardware budgeting, we can also support the software asset management team with the software licensing costs for next year and general budget support on budgeting for software next year. Kind of a hangover from the previous slide on that relationship between Ham and Sam. But yeah, software licensing costs and budget support is something that hardware asset management can play a key role in whilst we're doing our hardware stuff.